to a deal there?
Pretty much, I think so. We'll see. I've dealt with the Prime Minister, have a good relationship. And yeah, we have to take care of our farmers. The farmers are very important to me. And the deal with Canada is moving along, and we should be able to have a deal with Canada. We're also starting on a new deal with Mexico. A much better deal for the United States. I only make good deals. Much better deal for the United States, both with Canada and Mexico.
Donald Trump was pushing for a major trade victory with Canada, but after 18 months of high-stakes negotiations, Ottawa may have just pulled the plug on the deal. Canada has now dropped the hammer, shutting the U.S. out of what could become one of the biggest trade confrontations between the two neighbors in years. Prime Minister Mark Carney appears to have slammed the door on Trump's trade terms, walking away from a potential U.S. deal at a critical moment. Carney has rejected Trump's trade demands, calling the proposed terms unfair and uneconomic as tensions between Washington and Ottawa continue to rise. With U.S. tariffs of up to 50% looming over roughly $28 billion in Canadian goods, Ottawa is warning that it could retaliate dollar for dollar. With the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement under growing pressure, Canada is increasingly looking beyond Washington for new trade opportunities and alternative markets. After 18 months of intense negotiations, the Canada-U.S. trade conflict has erupted again, raising fresh questions about where the relationship goes from here. Canada has suspended trade negotiations with the United States after Prime Minister Mark Carney rejected a series of last-minute demands from Washington, bringing the latest round of discussions to an abrupt halt. Mark Carney said the latest terms proposed by the United States were unfair and uneconomic, arguing that the demands would not serve Canada's economic interests or provide a balanced basis for a potential agreement. The Canadian Prime Minister also questioned whether a future trade deal with the United States could be considered reliable. After 18 months of negotiations, Canadian negotiators have now been ordered to return to Ottawa, signaling a major setback in the prolonged trade talks and leaving the future of the Canada-U.S. negotiations uncertain. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said, and I quote, "Over the past 18 months, Canada's new government has focused on building our strength at home, diversifying our partnerships abroad, and striking a fair deal with the United States. Our objectives in our trade negotiations have been to preserve tariff-free access to the U.S. for the vast majority of Canadian business, provide greater stability to our trade relationship, significantly reduce U.S. tariffs on our key strategic industries, so that Canadian businesses in these sectors will have the best access of any in the world, protect our small and medium-sized businesses, the lifeblood of our economy, including by removing the imminent threat of new tariffs, and maintain our flexibility, independence, and sovereignty so we can keep building the Canada we want. We have recognized from the beginning that America has changed, and that we will not return to our old relationship. Our government understood, before many, that America is altering all its trade relationships, putting tariffs on its closest allies and charging for access to its vast market. We have worked in that context to strike a fair deal that would provide the best access to the U.S. market and greater certainty to Canadian businesses and workers. Throughout, our goal has been to secure the best deal for Canadians, never a deal at any price or on any deadline." Unquote. On the other hand, United States Trade Representative issued a statement, and I quote, "Tonight, Canada declined to finalize the trade deal under the terms agreed earlier this week. Despite the U.S. offer to Canada to receive the best treatment of any major exporter to our market, new demands and walkbacks of other commitments by Canada have appended the careful balance reached in the past days. In addition, Canada is continuing to maintain its prolonged retaliation against the United States, including, among other things, flat-out prohibitions on certain American goods and services. For decades, Canada has enjoyed the most favorable access to the U.S. market of any country. And from the beginning of President Trump's trade program, Canada has continued to enjoy the best treatment in the world, even after, like China, retaliating against the United States. This week, the United States agreed to provide even better treatment to Canada, offering significant tariff reductions on steel, aluminum, autos, and lumber. The U.S. offer was also forward-looking and included a historic economic and national security partnership to cooperate on export controls, combat transshipment, enhance digital trade, and align certain external tariffs. The offer would have led to supply chain coordination on aerospace, complementary actions to address unfair trade practices, critical minerals cooperation, increased enforcement against imports produced with forced labor, and the announcement of formal U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement negotiations. This is a missed opportunity for Canada to partner with the United States, which is the fastest-growing economy in the G7. Unquote. The breakdown in negotiations came just before America's 50% tariffs were due to take effect on Canadian goods, adding further pressure to the already strained trade relationship between the two countries. The new tariffs are expected to cover roughly $20 billion to $28 billion worth of Canadian exports, potentially affecting a significant volume of goods shipped from Canada to the United States. Prime Minister Mark Carney said Canada would respond to the U.S. tariffs with retaliatory measures, warning that Ottawa would match the American tariffs dollar for dollar. The latest trade dispute comes at a critical moment, just ahead of the wider review of the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, or USMCA, which governs trade across North America. The USMCA replaced the North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA, and has governed much of the trade between the United States, Canada, and Mexico since it took effect in 2020. The U.S. Trade Representative has said the agreement provides comprehensive rules for trade between the three countries, along with established mechanisms for resolving disputes when disagreements arise. However, the White House has argued that the USMCA does not provide sufficient benefits for the United States, raising questions about whether Washington will seek significant changes during the upcoming review. Washington has also linked its broader tariff policy to a wider effort to renegotiate trade relationships and secure what it considers more favorable terms with key trading partners. And remember, the scale of U.S.-Canada trade is enormous, with goods traded between the two countries estimated to have reached around $715.5 billion in 2025. Services trade adds even more to that relationship, with reports estimating another $156.8 billion in trade between the United States and Canada. Prime Minister Mark Carney said Canada will focus on strengthening its domestic economy, while also diversifying its overseas partnerships to reduce the country's exposure to disruptions in the U.S. market. Ottawa says it is advancing nearly $500 billion worth of major infrastructure projects, with the government presenting these investments as part of a broader effort to support economic growth and strengthen Canada's long-term competitiveness. Canada is also pointing to its network of free trade agreements, which it says gives Canadian businesses access to markets representing around 1.5 billion consumers across different parts of the world. Prime Minister Carney has even said Canada must reduce its dependence on the U.S. market, signaling a potential shift toward a more diversified trade strategy as tensions with Washington continue. Despite suspending the trade negotiations, Ottawa has not cut off diplomatic engagement with Washington, leaving the door open for continued discussions and a possible return to the negotiating table in the future.
Upgrade your news experience with the all-new HT app. Download now.